Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another lecture. Alright, today we're going to talk about our first topic in issue 2 of a diverse society, okay, that being the factors of diversity. So, in this particular topic, we're going to discuss the four main aspects that make us diverse, okay, so the difference, what makes us so different from one another, even though we may live in the same community or society. Okay, so there's going to be what we call social-cultural factors, but also socio-economic factors. Okay, so I'll explain more a little bit on later. The first factor is, of course, nationality, and this is the most obvious factor, right? We all belong, or most of us belong to very, very different countries across the world, right? And of course, that becomes a defining characteristic for us, especially when we go overseas. Okay, so factors of diversity falls under nationality because they influence, okay, the way that we experience life in society. And so identities, just like nationalities, may change over time, as we have learned before, right? And are thus not permanent. So in terms of nationality, we're talking about citizenship, all right, which is what we covered before. And specifically, in this case, we are talking about legal status and also the sense of belonging that we have. Okay, so part of the national, identity, if you can say that, and what makes it so diverse is people from different countries have very different identities that are shared with the people of the same nation. Okay, so generally people are more comfortable with those from the same nation because they already have common experiences, common beliefs, common attitudes. Okay, that makes it much easier for them to communicate. So in our case in Singapore, okay, this can be seen in the acceptance for multiracialism and multiculturalism, and also for a love of food across all cultures. That is part of our identity, but may not be the same for people from other countries. Okay, so that brings us into the next point, which is something a little bit more individual. Okay, race and ethnicity. Now, we have a tendency, okay, to conflict these two together. Okay, and I'm here to tell you that very simply, these two are not the same concept. Okay, they're not the same concept, even though in Singapore we usually classify them as the same thing. Race is talking about biological things, okay, things that you're born with, so what we call physical characteristics. Ethnicity is something that you develop over time, okay, in terms of the practices you have, the culture that you have, the language you speak, and your ancestry. Okay, things that are more culture based, more developed rather than biological. Okay, sometimes it is complex because there's no fixed definition for any of these sociological terms. Okay, so some people in China may be Chinese, okay, but there are many other groups in China that are Chinese by nationality but are not ethnically Chinese. They might be Han. No, Han is the majority. Sorry, they might be of the Hui minorities or the Uyghurs and stuff like that, right? So there is very very different idea, okay, between race, ethnicity, and even nationality in many cases. So they have a strong influence because uh, it obviously will define the way that we live, okay, the practices that we have, okay, and that would shape our lives as well. In Singapore, race and ethnicity, right, we have classified ourselves into CMIO, which is Chinese, Malay, Indian, and others. And why this was so is because in the 1960s, when we first gained independence, this was seen as necessary for nation building and also community spirit, which I'll talk about in the next few lectures. Okay, and indeed it has carried on until today. You can still see CMIO on your ICs, but of course, today we are moved on to a lot more new classifications. So in this case, Mr. Batman bin Superman, okay, is of the Javanese race, okay, that being from a race from Indonesia mainly, okay, and so it is no longer just Malay, right, or any one of the CMIOs. There today there are many many different kinds of racial identities that we have grown to accept and not just classify everybody into four same categories. Yeah, and indeed we can see this in terms of the double barreled categories. So with more interracial marriages and births, okay, we're seeing parents of different races come together and their child are actually born mixed, right? So in 2011, the government has changed it so that we no longer just need to choose one. Okay, we can actually have double barreled categories, so like Chinese, Malay, or Indian others as well. Okay. Third factor, okay, is religion. Now, religion itself, right? Again, it is still an influence, a very strong influence, because religion will also determine our practices, okay, and our beliefs that will obviously shape the rest of our lives. Now, by definition, religion is a set of beliefs and practices observed by a group of people, okay, and most religions have common values in them. Now, in Singapore, okay, the constitution, as you have covered before, allows for the practicing of any religion freely. Okay, there's a right to religion, right? And we seek to, you know, have a sort of religious harmony in Singapore. Okay, there being 10 religions that are officially recognized, okay, in Singapore, being Hinduism, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Taoism, Jainism, Christianity, Islam, Sikhism, and the Baha'i faith. Okay, so what is different, okay, between this and the rest is that one can be born into a religion. So if your family is of a certain religion, more likely than not, you will be a part of the religion as well, or you can accept the faith later in life. Okay, so it's usually it is not bound by race, is not bound by ethnicity, is not bound by nationality in most cases either. Okay, and so religious practices actually influence our way of life more so, I would say, than a lot of other things, simply because it defines the way we think and also therefore the choices that we make. Okay, so this makes us social culturally diverse because our experiences and our beliefs shape our very, very different actions, okay, that we take in life. And so this is the sort of breakup, okay, of religious affiliation in Singapore, being the Buddhist faith being the largest, okay, and then would be Christians next. In fact, none, okay, or the many denominations of none, okay, would take up third place, and so on and so forth, right? So indeed, we have a lot of different religions living in Singapore, and I think that is one of our more defining fates, cultural features, lah. Okay, and again, that is what contributes to our social cultural diversity in the first place. Okay, the last one is different from the rest. The last one is called socio-economic status, or SES. Okay, this has got to do with socio-economic diversity in terms of our income and our wealth. Okay, we're talking about four different indicators: income, occupation, education, and ownership of wealth. Okay, so our SES is determined by one or more of these things. And we usually separate them into three categories: high, medium, and low. Now, high are people with wealthier backgrounds, okay, or they have a accumulated amount of wealth, a larger amount of wealth. Okay, medium SES is where the majority is, okay. They are usually working white collar jobs, okay, and we call this in Singapore the PMET jobs, which are professionals, managers, executive technicians, and so on. Okay, so white collar coming from the fact that, you know, most office workers wear white formal shirt with a white collar, okay, there being the name. Okay, low SES, all right. Unfortunately, these are groups of people who are not as fortunate and privileged, okay, and they have perhaps sometimes a lack of means to fully support themselves and their families, and they might require support from the government and from society at large. Okay, uh, people usually, okay, there are people in this particular SES, okay, that take on what we call blue collar jobs, okay, coming from the overalls, okay, the traditional old overalls, okay, that people used to wear in the past, okay, which is the blue ones, okay, and these are jobs that actually require manual labor and not too much skill in terms of education level, that is. Okay, so this distribution of SES is like this. Okay, in fact, there is a very vast diversity in terms of income distribution and wealth distribution across many countries in the world. Okay, and one of the more important things to do with this diversity is actually poverty. Okay, so poverty is defined as a state of having a few material possessions. Okay, so this is the state where you're essentially the poorest of the poor. All right, absolute poverty is what we call when a person living below $2 a day and has a lack of access to basic necessities. Relative poverty has to do with the situation within the nation. Okay, so if this person is living significantly less because they are earning significantly less than the average national income, okay, that would be called relative poverty. And this is very sad because in wealthy developed nations, okay, a lot of times these people are actually hidden from the public eye when we don't actually know about them very clearly. Okay, and that makes their situation even worse because the ways that they can get help, okay, are actually also limited as well, and that's a very very sad scenario here. Okay, so how can we measure such SES diversity, especially when it's so important that we know? Okay, the first measure is what we call social mobility, and you will see this term appear over and over again. So one thing to note is that SES is not permanent. You can move up, you can move down. Okay, lower to higher, usually through education. Higher to lower would be loss in income. So this movement, okay, this movement usually upwards, okay, is what we call social mobility. Okay, the second one is income inequality. Okay, so usually most metrics will measure income inequality through what we call the Gini coefficient. Okay, a statistic measure that measures income distribution. So 0 will be most equal. This is your perfect communist state. Okay, 0 being everybody has equal income. Okay, 1 being most unequal, which means one person holds all the income. Okay, so countries will fall within this range of 0 and 1. Okay, the closer it is to 1, the more unequal it is. And so when we say the income gap is widening, you might have heard this phrase before, the income gap is widening. Okay, this means that the Gini coefficient is moving towards more unequal. So more of the top 1% holds more of the income, whereas the lower classes, the lower SES, will actually hold less of the income. Okay, that's what we call income inequality. Yeah, so it's not literally income gap as the cartoon suggests, but there is a very clear disparity, okay, between those in the lower bottom 80% and the higher top 20%. Yeah, so this is the trend of Gini coefficient in Singapore. So yes, we have one of the higher Gini coefficients, okay, in the world because of the way the wealth is distributed in Singapore. Okay, we have millionaires, we also have people living in relative poverty. So the distribution in terms of high, low, and high, medium, and low SES is actually quite significant, and this is something that the government has been trying to address in recent years. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we check this growing coefficient? We use taxes, it is government assistance. Okay, so many things that you have heard of before, like your financial assistance scheme, FAS, like your CDC MOE bursary, or your CHAS, or your GST voucher, or your CDC vouchers, all these things are used to help Singapore check its income inequality. Make sure that the wealth and income distribution is not significantly large. Okay, so I'm sure you are familiar enough with all these different schemes lah. Okay, and the last and final measure of socio-economic diversity is inflation. Okay, inflation is to do with the general increase in prices and a fall in the purchasing value of money. Now, what does this mean? You might have heard this term all over the news, okay, in the past few years, right? Inflation, everything is being inflated. Literally, its meaning means that, okay, the prices of things go up. Okay, prices of things go up, but at the same time your money loses value. So more things get more expensive, but the money in your wallet has less value, so you can buy less things. Okay, inflation is a natural process. Why? Because there is a fixed amount of resources, but the demand is changing. Okay, so if you don't understand this, okay, that's fine. You do not need to know the specific economic idea. All you need to know is that prices go up value of money goes down, and that causes a problem because cost of living goes up as well. Okay, so normal inflation is actually good, right? Surprisingly, right? Because that means your economy is developed, your economy is growing, right? But when it becomes uncontrollable, that's when it really, really gets really bad. Okay, and this is what we call hyperinflation. Now, hyperinflation is when inflation skyrockets so high, okay, that the local currency, the money that people have in their wallet, completely become useless. So overnight, maybe $1,000 becomes $0 because the prices went so far up and the value of money went so far down that you cannot even use the $1,000 to buy anything anymore. Right? That's what we call hyperinflation. Oops. Deflation, okay, there's actually deflation when the inflation goes below 0%. So in fact, when the money value, okay, goes up, okay, that is what we call deflation. But sounds like a good thing, but actually it's not. Okay, why? Because unemployment may occur because demand decreases. When everybody have more money, okay, the value of money goes up. There will be less demand for things. Okay, and indeed, what you earn is also technically lesser, okay, compared to the value that was originally there before. Okay, so when demand decreases, because everybody have more money, demand decreases. Okay, yeah, so simplest cause of inflation, essentially this is why cost increase occurs because demand remains the same but the supply decreases, which means that there is an increase in production cost, which increases the cost. Okay, so technically the percentage that you see here, inflation is how much prices rise or fall in a given amount of time. If inflation is 8% now, it means that prices are 8% higher than at the same time last year. Okay, and indeed this is Singapore's core inflation rate year on year. Now in 2009 and 2020, okay, very obviously those are the periods of time where Singapore experienced recessions. Okay, recessions being when economic growth goes into a slump. Okay, 2009 being the financial crisis, 2020 being our favorite COVID, right? So that was when inflation actually fell because the growth itself is also falling, and that's what we mean by deflation, right? So when the value of the local currency goes up because of inflation going down, it's not a good thing because that also means that growth and demand is going down, right? And so that is actually a bad thing. So the best way is to actually keep inflation stable at a lower percentage, maybe like 1.0%. Okay, so yeah, indeed, in some countries they actually have hyperinflation. So in Zimbabwe, for example, their annual rate of inflation actually reached over almost 8,000% in 2007. So when hyperinflation occurs, the value of the local currency decreases, the prices of all goods increases significantly. So your currency can buy less things, hence it is worth less. Okay, this is the idea of scarcity. Okay, if there is currency buying less things, right? Okay, you cannot be worth more, right? Clearly, right? Because your same $10 10 years ago can buy you say 3 plate of chicken rice. Today it might buy you only 2 plates. That means your money is worth less, right? Okay, so that's the idea of inflation. Okay, and indeed, right, it can reach to the point that even this $100 trillion note from Zimbabwe cost only is the equivalent of 40 US cents. $100 trillion are the largest denomination on earth. Okay, cost only is the equivalent of 40 US cents. Basically nothing. Okay, so indeed, so I think the history students might know, okay, Weimar Germany, okay, partially, okay, contributed to the rise of Hitler because of the hyperinflation going on in Weimar Germany at that time. Okay, so yeah, indeed, you saw the 100 trillion whatever note just now, right? German marks, okay, were also issued in denominations of 50 trillion in 1923. Okay, so the problem here is that some of you might think, hey, if my money is like that, if inflation so high, why not I print more money now, then everybody got more money. But you remember, if I print a lot of something and everybody have more of this thing, wouldn't the money be worth less? For example, if today I say Taylor Swift ticket, okay, Taylor Swift ticket maybe they sell 10,000, okay, 10,000, right? Singapore population maybe around 6 million. Okay, so if all these 6 million people want to go for Taylor Swift, but there's only 10,000 tickets, wouldn't the tickets be more valuable? Right? Because there's only so little for so many people. But if today I say, wow, Taylor Swift concert, everybody got 6 million tickets, everybody get one ticket, wouldn't the value be less? Because everybody has access to it, right? So why would it be worth anything more than the other person? That is what we call the scarcity mindset. So when money is less scarce, means everybody have more money. Okay, these paper notes are so many paper notes in circulation. It means that money is less scarce, and therefore, because it's less scarce and more people have it, okay, it is less valuable. It's not unique, right? You can, if you want to think about it in a less abstract kind of way, it is less unique. Okay, so less unique, not so special lah. Okay, so the value is going down. Okay, that's a way to think about it. Now, this is for your information. Okay, do you need to know in specifics? Not really, but it is good to understand the idea behind these key terms that you keep seeing over and over again, be it in your source-based questions or on your SRQ extracts or even on the news, right? So it's good to know, right? It will help you in your understanding of the sources and whatever you read, right? And you can, of course, use it in your responses as well if you know how to use it. Okay, so yeah, that is it for this particular chapter. This is just an introduction into diversity. In the next few lectures, we will talk about specific benefits and challenges of diversity, and also how different countries and individuals and companies actually respond to increasing socio-economic and social-cultural diversity as well. Okay, as always, keep on keeping on, right? Study hard, and I wish you all the best for your revision. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.